Welcome to day 68 of the New Way. I'll read Matthew 12, 1 through 8. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priest. Or haven't you read in the law that the priest on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath, and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." I'll also read Luke 6, 1 through 5. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain, rub them in their hands, and eat the kernels. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions. Then Jesus said to them, 'The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.'" According to the Pharisees, the disciples were harvesting on the Sabbath. I imagine that they were walking near a field of wheat and reached over and grabbed a few heads of wheat or maybe oats. Some translations say that they were picking corn and eating it raw. Neither raw grain nor raw corn make a very good meal, but it would help if you were hungry. Jesus reminded them that David took consecrated bread and fed his hungry soldiers with it. That story is found in 1 Samuel 21, 1 through 6. In other words, he broke God's law to keep his men alive. If you want that reference again, it's 1 Samuel 21, 1 through 6. And Jesus reminded the priest that they do all kinds of work on the Sabbath when they prepare an animal for sacrifice. I believe Jesus was challenging them to think carefully about the laws and not just obey them without meaning. Jesus again reminded them of verses in Hosea 6:6 and Micah 6:6 through 8, and pleaded with them to have mercy and compassion and kindness instead of rigid laws. Jesus was teaching something new. He was teaching a new way, not the law of rules and regulations. I believe that he was saying, if there is a judgment to be made, it should be based on mercy, kindness, and compassion, not on laws. In the American justice system, we have two different punishments for someone who steals, based on their reasons for doing so. If they were stealing food to feed their family, they are given mercy and a lighter sentence. This is based on this teaching of Jesus. Now let's read Matthew 12, 9 through 14. Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "If any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Let's read this same story in Mark 3, 1 through 5. Another time Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. He said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Now I'll read Luke's version in Luke 6, 6 through 11. On another Sabbath he went into the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?" He looked around at them all and then said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was completely restored. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus. Note Jesus' emotions as he saw the religious leaders' lack of care for this man. I don't want Jesus to ever look at me like that. I want him to be pleased with the way I treat others. So what is this law that they were accusing Jesus of breaking? What does the word Sabbath mean? It was a time of rest. In the Old Testament law, there was a Sabbath day every seventh day, and there was a Sabbath year every seventh year. You can read about it in Leviticus 25, 1 through 7, if you wish. Today's Jews still practice both the weekly and yearly Sabbath in Israel today. Jesus' new way says that God's laws have fulfilled their purpose, and we are no longer living under their direction. We'll talk more about that later. I want you to see what Jesus taught about the Sabbath. I will read Mark 2, 23 through 28. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions. Then he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." Let's look at Genesis 2 and 3. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Here we see God celebrating the first Sabbath. How did he celebrate it? He rested. My husband and I have tried to keep our Sabbath, which is Sundays, holy. We don't have a lot of rules. We just try to not do work on that day. And we try not to cause anyone else to have to work on the Sabbath. There are certain exceptions, like when we are on vacation or traveling, or when someone is sick and needs help. But on a normal Sunday, we spend it in restful activities, playing games, watching television, visiting with friends, taking naps, reading, etc. I don't cook elaborate meals. In fact, for years we had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every Sunday. God has blessed us and refreshed our spirits and bodies so that we can work hard for the other 6 days. My daddy, L.B. Gunn, was known as a farmer who wouldn't work on Sundays, even during harvest. That was unusual and people noticed. Most farmers felt that they couldn't afford to not harvest their crops on Sunday if the weather was right. My daddy was at church in worship, regardless of the season. But we, as followers of Jesus, do not keep the Sabbath because it was one of God's 10 commandments or laws. We keep the Sabbath because of this word from Jesus that says, "The Sabbath was made for man." It is not a law for us. It is a gift, a privilege, an opportunity, a prize. God modeled this for us at creation when he rested on the seventh day. We have taken a day off most every week to just rest and relax and have fun. It refreshes and renews us for the rest of the week. Our Sabbath also includes our worship time with our church family. Jesus came to set us free from rules and regulations and laws. I'll reread Luke 6:5. Then Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Isn't it sad that the one who created the Sabbath was told that he didn't know how to celebrate it correctly? When he declared that he was the Lord of the Sabbath, he was declaring again that he was the Messiah. They should have fallen at his feet and worshipped him, but they didn't. In his service, Dale.